Musings of a Modern Conservative. Short Essays on Various Political Topics by Thomas Hamilton. Section 3. Musings on Various Modern Political Topics. Essay 14. America Lost. Musings on the Aftermath of the Tragedy of 9/11. I will not question the actions of the individuals within the government with whom I trust certain decisions must have been painfully difficult. I am not an obese filmmaker attempting to pass judgment on an individual being told that his country has just been attacked. I cannot imagine, nor will I try to imagine, what exactly was going through this or any president's head as their country's sovereignty is being breached. The actions that followed are easily examined, with perfect historical understanding as to the need, success, and/or failure of such actions. It is far more difficult to make those decisions at that time when the consequences are still unknown. What will follow is an examination of what this great American tragedy could have looked like, and how conservative or liberal it was, and asks the question, could things have gone better? If things could have been dealt with better, then can changes of this nature still be made? It is perfectly acceptable to try something and have it go wrong. I would argue there is nothing wrong with trying something that doesn't succeed, and trying something else and then making it work. In fact, I think it makes one more, not less, American. I would like to think that from our founding, that we as Americans are a little more unique than the rest of the world. In this one respect, we as Americans would more often choose freedom over security. Has America gone soft, though? For some time now, I think that the culture in America has shifted from a country that enjoys its freedoms to a country that is afraid of the freedoms of another. What kinds of laws prevent the freedom of one in order to provide the security for another? How does this apply to the actions and laws put in place after the events of 9/11? I would argue that there could be many such laws within the depths of the Patriot Act, but this is of less concern to me, as they primarily deal with intelligence gathering. What of the rules regarding so-called enhanced interrogation? Again, not really of much concern to the average American, as even if the government didn't do such things, I'm sure, when pressed for need, our brave soldiers would act in our country's best interest at all times, as has been done for hundreds of years. So the real examination ought to come at a civilian end, exactly where I think the founders would have wanted it. What about the laws and rules governing airline security? Have any of these laws really done much to stop an attack in this country? Have there been an abundance of stories and newscastings regarding the successes of all this new security? Even more questioning is this, of what is known of the hostage takeovers, of the flights on 9/11. How exactly did they occur? They occurred not by a grand Hollywood-style takeover, with bribed employees, elaborate fake identification, and hidden guns. No, they occurred with cheap, everyday box cutters. So should we outlaw all box cutters? Should we even remove all box cutters from all airline passengers? Would this even help? If we remove box cutters, what else could be used as a weapon? How about a plastic fork or knife, broken perhaps? Sure, it may only be useful once, but it could still kill or injure someone. Then again, how many people could you kill with a box cutter? If an entire passenger cabin is rushing at you, how many could one of these box-cutting wielding fiends dispatch? My guess is very few. If the entire premise is on face less than logical, why the hysteria, and how did it happen? I have no complete answers to these questions. I am only asking them because I think it is time to really examine what it is that occurred with some cold logic now that the emotions have settled down, even if just slightly. The how is a little less ambiguous. The question at hand seems less to be about how many could a terrorist kill, and more about, do you want to be the one that the terrorist kills? Even if the terrorist can only successfully dispatch one passenger and the rest easily overtake this terrorist, what of the one who has sacrificed themselves? More interestingly, though, is this. Did anyone expect to be hurled into a building before it was too late? Wouldn't it seem more logical to end up in the middle of nowhere and up for negotiations, as had happened before in the late 1970s? If you thought that it would be a simple matter of your government negotiating or rescuing you, as had happened before, what reason would anyone have for resisting? How could anyone know what the intentions of these individuals would be? I doubt that anyone on those now infamous flights thought that their plane would turn into a missile, or the events surrounding 9/11 would most likely have gone much differently. So what has prevented another 9/11 attack from happening? I think of two things that have prevented more tragic and horrific attacks. The first is our increased intelligence gathering efforts. Almost everything is taken seriously, and moreover, now that an enemy has been identified, we are hunting them. The second is the American spirit. In both of the well-televised attempted bombings of the passenger planes, it was an act of American demonstrating the patriotism that prevented the attack from being successful. Did airline security work in either case? Did the extra screening and scrutiny work? I would say they were both of very little consequence. What was, though, was an American. If we have now truly identified what actually works, why is there still all of this fear? Why do Americans still have to practically undress themselves before government bureaucrats simply to exercise their right to engage in commerce? I don't undress myself when I go into Macy's, so why when I buy an airline ticket? Would any of the founders of this country do anything so preposterous? Especially since it does so little to protect them. I would wager much of my life's wealth that our founders would be much less than willing to humble themselves in such a manner. So why do we humble ourselves? While I do think there is a place for normal security at an airport, as in all things in life, there is a point where it is useful, and when it is no longer useful. Why not focus our resources on things such as intelligence gathering? What would happen if all the new TSA security checkers around the nation were out gathering intelligence about terrorists? Wouldn't that do much more to prevent an attack on this country than checking bags? Doesn't checking bags only stop airline flights? Can't a terrorist attack in any number of other ways? Did airline security stop the attempted bombings at Times Square? Did they even get a chance? The point of this argument is not to accuse any organization, but to ask the question, could our resources be spent in a more productive manner? What about individual citizens? Shouldn't terrorists be more afraid of them than they are of someone checking their bag? Though, how could a terrorist be more afraid of a normal citizen, or more importantly, an American citizen? This is where my final questions lead me to. What is the goal of a terrorist? I think that the ultimate goal would be to change our society. If the previous statement is true, and we dramatically change our society, if we become fearful of everything, from flying on an aircraft to walking down the street, haven't the terrorists won? If we live in fear, if we give in, if we act less American, then no matter what, we have allowed the terrorists to win. We should fight back against the terrorists, not simply with those in the government and the military giving it their all to prevent future attacks, but also by maintaining just as much freedom as we had before the attack. Wouldn't it be more damaging to these terrorists, who are already prepared to die, to simply not give in to their demands? In other words, live like our founders would have wanted us to live like Americans.